welcome to episode 2 of my podcast. It's such a thrill to have you here. In the first episode, I talked about the title of this podcast, Mid-Heaven is a Place on Earth. What was that all about? And we talked about the mid-heaven. So go back to that first episode if you would like to dive into that part of your astrology birth chart. Yes, I will be talking all things cosmic. Coaching with the cosmos is my favorite. I used to be a social worker, as I was explaining in the first episode. Since then, I have been doing personal holistic coaching using all of my awareness with mental health counseling, as well as using astrology as a very powerful tool. And I've since written books. And we're going to be diving into my books, how they help. They are workbooks, they are guided journals to help you do the work on your own. And so we're going to dive into what is shadow work in this episode. It's kind of a trendy new title for dealing with your triggers. That's what it is. Let's dive into what is shadow work. Here's my book. It is a guided journal on how to do shadow work using astrology. So what is shadow work? What is astrology? How do you combine them both? To me, these are two extremely powerful holistic healing tools. And so they've worked for me. They've worked for many of my clients. And I've put it all together in this book that is available on Amazon. And we're going to be diving into the book. We're going to be taking little snippets of this book and hopefully helping you work on your own shadow work. So first of all, I just wanted to read part of my introduction here of the book. This guided journal is a powerful tool to help you unlock the triggers that have kept your unconscious programs on repeat. Taking back your power takes focus and rewiring. You can't just pray or eat or numb it away. Avoiding it doesn't help. It takes dedicated focus and practice to stop the triggers that have been running the storyline of your life. Can anyone relate? Yes, indeed. And in this intro, I tell you a little bit about my story, how it's taken me years to get here to this point, to get honest with myself about the triggers and what my programs are. If you want to know, it's a very, another very trendy word is, what are your unconscious programs? Well, if you want to know what they are, because they're in your unconscious and you're thinking, well, that's very mysterious. How will I even know what my programs are? Well, all you have to do is look at what's triggering you. So what's bothering you on the daily? What are you constantly going over in your mind? What do you always yap about? You call your best friend and, oh, guess what happened? And you're noticing, wow, this keeps happening to me. Maybe it's a different person, maybe it's a different place, maybe it's a different circumstance, but it's always the same thing. That's your unconscious program. And so when we take an honest look at our triggers and our knee-jerk reactions, we can actually start doing shadow work. So just a little quick intro there, just to show you inside this beautiful book. We also, I give you pages for self-care, just to check in with yourself every day. What are you grateful for? I get you to write it out. So that's just at the very beginning of this book. But I just wanted to show you the intro to the shadow work. What is it? What exactly is shadow work? So I'm going to read to you right here. Shadow work is uncovering the parts of you that have been disowned, repressed, and rejected. Here's a clue that you're ready to do shadow work. Can you read that? You are sick and tired of your own BS. Can anyone else relate to this? So again, it's like you've been going through your life this way. It keeps showing up. Now, an example could be you continue to have heartbreaking relationships with boyfriends, okay? And it just keeps happening. So it's a different guy, different name. He's a different person, but it's the same scenario over and over. Maybe you keep getting cheated on, okay? Maybe it's that. or maybe they end terribly. Okay, you keep getting ghosted, to use another trendy term. It just keeps showing up. Another example is at work. You make friends with people, everything's good, but you know it always happens. There's someone in the office and you just can't get along with, and this takes all of your energy. It absolutely drains you to have to deal with that person. And it might even be to the point that it's so bad in your life that you have to keep quitting jobs because you literally can't put up with so-and-so at that job, or so-and-so at that job, or so-and-so at that job. What that really is what that is. It's a repeated trigger that is just begging you to look at it. So you have been disowning, repressing, and rejecting that part of yourself, and you've been running away from it, or it just keeps repeating and you're just not able to see what it is. Okay. So what is shadow work? I'm going to read from the book here. Shadow work is the process of exploring your unconscious blocks, or your shadow self. So your unconscious blocks, another way of saying that, it's your shadow self. So you do this in order to embrace, not reject, your triggers, to embrace your triggers. Focus your thoughts and learn how to transmute that darkness into light. So it's not just about identifying your triggers, the shadow self. I also teach you in this book how to transmute that energy into light. So for instance, say there's a whole bunch of negative energy coming toward you. People are gossiping about you. I teach you in this book how to actually use all that negativity that's coming toward you and projecting it out as light. That's your superpower. We all have that superpower within us, and I teach you how to do that in this book. So to keep reading, what is shadow work? At some point, it's usually during childhood, before the age of 7, you started to believe that some of the parts of you were unlovable, and you hid these parts from everyone because you felt ashamed. These are your shadows, and often you reject them so deeply that they drive your unconscious behaviors. Until you heal these shadows, you will attract people and relationships that have the same level of psychological wounding. I'm going to repeat that again. Until you heal these shadows, you will continue to attract people and relationships that have that same level of psychological wounding. Therefore, everybody is a mirror for us to heal these triggers and these shadows. And you will do this over and over again until you are ready to explore your shadow self. Okay, so is shadow work important? I would say heck yes. I would definitely say yes. Unless you want to keep doing the same thing and it gets stuck up in your monkey mind and you keep repeating the victim story. That is definitely something I get into in this book, is being honest about if you are stuck in a victim story. This doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a human being. And we have all been there, where you get stuck in a story and it gets stuck on repeat, and then you continue to attract that level of wounding into your life. So if you keep telling the stories, maybe you're the one gossiping about people, you're the one that's complaining about people. If you continue to spread that kind of hate out into the world, that's going to come back to you. That's the way that it works. Okay. Here's the next page on shadow work. Shadow work is taking an honest look at your triggers and your shadows, your knee-jerk reactions, your repeated behaviors and thought patterns, your stuck traumas. So your thoughts can trigger emotions, but your thoughts have the power to override emotions. That's another thoughtful point in this book. You'll see that I have pictures, I have points. It's easy to read. Yes, there is some reading to do like that. But I definitely give it to you in bite-sized pieces so it's easy to digest, because this is deep, deep work that takes some time to digest. You can't just read this stuff in a book and think, oh yeah, I know exactly what it is, but then you actually have to do the work. Okay. So the last point I make on this page is once you get honest with yourself, embrace the triggers, notice the repeated patterns, and observe your reactions, you can shatter the shame and empower yourself to rewrite the script. So remember that for later. That's going to be in an upcoming episode here on the podcast, is rewriting the script, how powerful of a tool rewriting the script is. And that's straight from one of my great teachers, Dolores Cannon. I'm also a QHHT practitioner, and that's one of the things that I include in this shadow workbook is the rewrite the script technique by Dolores Cannon. So that's a bit of a jump ahead, just a little bit of a sneak peek of what's to come. But before we end, I just wanted to read to you this next page. So I give you a lot of inspirational quotes with pictures. You can color them if you like. I make it very easy to digest this book. So I wanted to read this quote to you. And it's from Jim Carrey. Quote, think of the word depressed as deep rest. Your body needs to be depressed. It needs deep rest from the character that you've been trying to play. Well, Jim, isn't that an interesting concept? Isn't that the truth? We get so caught up in playing the good girl, the good boy, being people pleasers. If you're watching this podcast, I can almost guarantee that you're a hardcore empath just like me. And when you are a highly sensitive person and an empathic person, we feel energy and we can morph into making a peaceful, a toxic environment peaceful. All we want is the peace. And so we can often pick up extremely toxic traits like people pleasing. We can definitely have a lifetime of people pleasing, which puts us into danger of repeated triggers, unconscious programs that are not serving us. It's going to keep coming up in our life until we're willing to give it a look. That's just one example, but people pleasing is an epidemic for empathic people like you and I. So is shadow work important? Are we all feeling the call to do shadow work? Yes, we are. For those of you who are feeling that the world is changing, you're hearing the call from within your heart and soul. You know that we're all walking each other home. And yes, the people that are triggering us, holding up mirrors for us, if you will, they're helping us walk home. We can blame them. We can shame them. We can gossip about them all we want, or we can stop that because that is one of our repeated patterns. We're noticing that that is actually a trigger. That's something that we need to stop. That's the shadow self that we have been avoiding. We know that we need to stop that so that we can transmute that negativity into a new future, get onto a different timeline. We're all feeling this call. If you are watching this, if you are listening to this podcast, I am more than certain that you are on the same path. And you know that we're all walking each other home. This is the depth that I go into in this book. So for this podcast episode, I just wanted to discuss what is shadow work. And again, just to summarize it, whatever's bugging you, whatever is bothering you, whatever is pushing your buttons, that's your shadow self that you have been rejecting and that you need to take an honest look at. And so I teach you in these podcast episodes, as well as in this book, in this workbook, in this guided journal, how to go through that emotion so that it doesn't own you anymore. You own it. You take your power back from the trigger, from that shadow self, and you transmute it so it is no longer part of your reality. So it's very important work for us empaths to do. We feel all the feels, and we know when we need to take responsibility for ourselves. So if you are ready to be courageous and to Take ownership for parts of yourself, that shadow part of yourself that you have been not taking responsibility for. Now's the time. Now is the time. You're hearing the call. You know, now is the time that we all need to level up. It's time to stop with the blame game, no longer shaming anyone, especially ourselves. It's time to stop with that. That's the whole point of doing shadow work. So that was just an intro to what shadow work is. Now, in this book and in the future episodes, we're going to be taking a look at how do you do shadow work? What are some tips and tricks on getting into the shadow self and walking through those emotions? And then, of course, in future episodes, I'm going to show you how I teach you how to use astrology to dive even deeper into your psyche. So I'm so excited to be sharing all the things with you. Thank you so much for following along. This was episode 2 on what exactly is shadow work. So leave your comments, leave your feedback, questions. What do you want to see on upcoming episodes? And if I wasn't clear about what shadow work is, please do ask the questions. Can't wait for the next episode where we're going to dive even deeper into some brain hacks on how to deal with shadow work, what to do with the shadows. Okay, you've finally identified what they are. What do you do with it? So please do come back. And thanks again for sharing your feedback. Can't wait to see you again.